Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vaga Muradian. Part of our team this week traveled to Nashville, Tennessee to cover the Army Aviation Association of America's annual conference and trade show, where our coverage is sponsored by Leonardo DRS. While there, we spoke with Juanita Harris, Executive Director of the U.S. Army's Aviation and Missile Research Development and Engineering Center at Redstone Arsenal in Alabama. We asked how her center is supporting the Army's future vertical lift effort and cross-functional teams, how these teams work, and more.
The purpose of today's forum here at Quad A is really talking about how the Army is moving forward to operate in a multi-domain battle environment. The AMRDEC, the Aviation Missile and Research Development and Engineering Center, serves in that in support of the Army's core priorities. They have 6 priorities, but the 2 that were specific here for this forum is the Future Vertical Lift priority, which is number 3. But we also bring to bear some missile support out of our number 5 priority for air and missile defense. So the purpose of the presentation today was to give an update to our audience on what our activities are from a research and development perspective and how we are supporting the Army priorities via the cross-functional team structure. So the cross-functional teams are an approach that the new Futures and Modernization Command has utilized to stand up. They are really a programmatic arm. What the cross-functional teams allows is that they are set up per each of the 6 priorities of the Army. Those teams are set up with a GO leader, in most cases, general officer leadership. And what has happened with the cross-functional teams is that they've actually reached across the industry of science and technology as a part of incorporating those components of the Research, Development, and Engineering Command. So for example, for Future Vertical Lift, CERDEC, the Communications and Electronics ARDEC, they play a part in developing the new sensors that we're going to need for degraded visual environment. We also have pulled in the Army Research Lab because they're helping with our man-machine interface definition. AMRDEC is playing a huge part in bringing in the actual aviation systems and integrating those components. So what the CFT has done is that they've reached out, brought in the appropriate partnerships, but then they've also leveraged with our TRADOC customer, the soldier interface. They've touched base with the sustainment arm so that we're looking at what are the cost effectiveness of these solutions that we're coming up with. And then they're also reaching out and utilizing industry to help bring additional innovative solutions to the table. So they truly are cross-functional in their nature, and that brings a new arm to the effectiveness of bringing valuable solutions to the Army. Future Vertical Lift is really a family of systems, and CAPESAT 3 is that configuration that is intended to replace the Apache and Black Hawk and provide that outreach capability for the Army. CAPESAT 3 is intended to be a larger configuration, more toward the heavy configuration. And where we are right now is we have been executing a joint multi-role demonstration procedure or approach, and we have been jointly matching that capability with our industry partners, specifically Bell and the Sikorsky-Boeing team. So we have been developing that heavy lift capability jointly with them. Bell has completed their first flight of their system in December of 2017, and we're expecting Sikorsky-Boeing to have their first flight later this year. The biggest lessons learned we've had is that it allows us as the government to bring to bear new innovative solutions, and we are partnering with industry in sort of a cost share perspective. So we invest money and they also invest money from their side. It allows them to understand what their systems are capable of, such that part of the role for science and technology is to inform the requirements. What is the realm of the possible? By doing these technology demonstrations and working in partnership with industries, it allows them to build their internal capabilities, but then it also allows us to inform what the requirements will need to be for the future. The main priorities that we focus on when we're looking at the CAPESAT 3s is speed, for one. Second would be agility of these platforms, because there have been concerns, but we've been able to test out via modeling and simulations to prove that, no, these systems will be just as agile as we need them to be. And then the other perspective is, what is the sustainment leg associated with the footprint that will be required to maintain those systems. So we are working in jointly with them such that we understand how to prioritize, how to look at those aspects, and making sure that we're meeting the requirements that will be needed for the future. CapeSat 1 is actually what's considered the light part of the family of systems for future vertical lift. It's light, medium, and heavy. CapeSat 3 was heavy, CapeSat 1 is light. So what is happening now is direction and guidance is coming from OSD, such that we will now look at doing another technology demonstration, because that proved very successful for us on CapeSat 3 on the CapeSat 1. So we will send out requests for information to industry partners. They can come back and propose what types of systems that they could bring to bear and participate in a future technology demonstration. And then we will then down select and move forward with technology demonstrations in the same way that we did CapeSat 3. The difference between CapeSat 1 and CapeSat 3 is CapeSat 1 is a smaller system, mostly a single engine configuration, higher speeds, of course, because speed would be the highest priority for that system. And so we'll be working jointly with partners that can bring those types of systems to bear. So the Future Vertical Lift CFT is really focused on a number of component parts. One is the configuration, which we've talked about with CapeSat 3 and a future CapeSat 1. But the other pieces are the degraded visual environment capability that will allow us to be able to operate our systems in all degraded environmental conditions. The other piece of it is actually coming up with the appropriate open architecture for the configurations that we will be flying. And then the last leg of it is primarily the larger piece of the autonomy, looking at optionally piloted systems, looking at new tactical UAS systems, and looking at what that human-machine interface needs to be to support autonomy for the future. Autonomy is very, very important as we move forward, not just for autonomous unmanned systems, but for autonomy for our piloted systems, because some of the autonomy will allow the pilots to concentrate more on the threat and those capabilities of the system that can be done without the pilot engagement would also be forms of autonomy. So autonomy is really there as an aid and a tool to the pilot. As we look at the Future Vertical Lift CFT and what the configurations that will be needed for the future, we have to also look at what threats that we're going to be facing. The missile side of the house is what plays into that. So we are looking at two very specific new capabilities to support Future Vertical Lift in the future. One is our modular missile technology. It's basically bringing in place a 70mm canister that has been placed together via an open architecture approach. In the past, when your threat changed, you would have to use a whole new missile system. Well, we're moving forward with an architecture that allows us to plug and play the specific components that we need. A new seeker or a new warhead or fusing technology to be effective against various threats. Therefore, that singular 70mm canister can be utilized across the broad spectrum of the threats. The other capability is multi-role guided missile extended range, because now as we have new configurations and they're going faster, we need to be able to provide a greater standoff distance for our pilots. So we're looking at extended ranges for this new guided missile capability. One of the things that will bring to bear is having that guided system will allow it to have technology to operate in GPS-denied environments as well as restricted RF environments. So therefore, it allows and provides greater distances, loitering capabilities, etc., for the man in the loop, such that those future threats, we can have more lethality against those. Well, the center has actually been around for about 53 years, and the purpose of the center was to provide specific engineering and systems expertise to the various program offices that deliver acquisition systems into the field. So the center originally started with missile support. Once the base realignment and closure occurred in 1997, aviation was then added to the center's portfolio. So we provide science and technology research investments as well as systems engineering support to the program offices. Partnership and collaboration is critical for our success as we go forward. The AMRDEC has always in the past had what we call industry days, where we bring in our industry partners, current ones, and also maybe prospective partners to partner with us, and we educate them on what new requirements we're going to have, what new challenges we're going to have, what contracting vehicles that we have that they can partner with us as we bring together those S&T solutions. So the CFT is basically taking hold of that partnership arrangement and just utilizing it to be more efficient. For AMRDEC and what's going to happen from an FeO perspective, we should have the first flight now of our Sikorsky Boeing platform, which will be great. We're also going to have in the FY20 flight trials for the next phase 2 of our degraded visual environment capability. But as an AMRDEC as a whole, we also support long-range precision fires, which is the #1, and we also support air and missile defense, which is, we actually lead that part, which is the #5 priority for the Army. So AMRDEC is poised to have the competency, the technical competency base to support what's needed for the future and moving the Army forward. For long-range precision fires, that is headed by the ARDEC, which is the Armaments Research Development and Engineering Center. AMRDEC plays a role in that CFT as well, and that particular critical mission. But from an AMRDEC perspective and the priorities for the Army, they're looking at the strategic long-range cannon capabilities. They're also looking at long-range fires and making sure that we've got precision fires, precision-guided missiles, and looking at expanding their range to have that standoff capabilities. On that CFT, we bring to bear the actual guided missile systems. That as a part of the AMRDEC, that is our mission. So we will be bringing and maturing more kinetic lethality solutions, also longer technologies to provide, again, that extended range capability. From an AMRDEC Center perspective, S&T has fortunately been steady loaded from a funding perspective. So even during the sequestration arenas, we saw a very minimal dip in the S&T lines. So from an S&T perspective and the importance of this Futures and Modernization Command, we believe the funding sources will be there and that will make sure that we have the technologies and the workforce able to meet those challenges. Relative to other support that we do, we provide engineering support out to the program offices on both the aviation and the missile side of the house. Well, those program offices get their funding and they fund us to provide that matrix engineering support. So I think even in times of sequestration, we have always had a mission and we've always been able to meet that mission. To me, Quad A is a phenomenal opportunity to bring the aviation community together, to understand the challenges that are needed as we move forward. The move going forward with the Futures and Modernization Command talks a lot about where we need to go as we're modernizing our Army. And AMRDEC, from an aviation perspective, we provide that science and technology leadership through our core competencies, through our technically competent workforce, through the innovative and technology ideas, out-of-the-box ideas that we have to make sure that our soldier has solutions for the gaps that he's facing in the field.